Welcome to week 136 of Misha Dianne Watch Santa Barbara.
Hello.
We have watched episode 659 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Monday, March 2nd, 1987. Keith tells Gina there's nothing he can do for her. Kelly tells her that she's met someone she cares for. But Gina does not change her mind about turning over the tape. She actually whines about Mason marrying Victoria Lane, which kind of throws off Kelly. Cece shows up to tell off Gina and to tell Kelly that Jeffrey will be okay. She tells him that he definitely earned that reward that Cece promised him. And Cece shocks her by saying there was never any discussion of a reward. So either Jeffrey was just joking, or he was talking metaphorically about something, or either way, I think Kelly's a bit wondering more about Jeffrey. Gina talks one of the guards into bringing a letter to Brandon for her, but the matron brings it to Keith Timmons instead. So I don't know. Oh yeah, because I forgot about this. The letter said, Brandon, go to the special hiding place. So when I read that, I thought, I wonder if Gina knew Keith would intercept the letter and has pulled a fast one. But I don't see how she could really do much behind bars. So I feel like maybe the tape, Brandon does know where the tape is, and that Keith is going to try to get Brandon to reveal it. But presumably Gina would have told Brandon under no circumstances should Keith Timmons get this tape.
Also, I think this is perhaps where the protective instincts of the other Capwells will come in if they see Keith Timmons kind of sniffing around Brandon, trying to coerce him into doing something.
Yeah, that's true, because he's... I don't think he can use the search warrant excuse for just showing up at the Capwell mansion now.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, I could say maybe he's bringing a message from Gina to Brandon, something like that. But he's going to have to try to convince someone, maybe Rosa, to let him in to see Brandon. Or maybe he might have to try to use Santana to get to Brandon. Sophia visits Keith to tell him he's going to be drummed out of office. And long story short, he hits on her and she slaps him. That was just a nice little scene between them where they get to spar.
Yeah, I really liked that scene actually, because we have not, as far as I know, seen a scene like that between Sophia and Keith.
Victoria and Mason talk about their childhoods. He says that he hasn't heard from his mother in over a year. I don't even know if she's still alive, he says. They talk about how she used to call him every year on his birthday, which we know from a previous scene couple of years ago, I guess. Back when Pamela and Mason had some kind of plan going that kind of got abandoned. So... now this, I don't know if she's still alive, makes me wonder, maybe Pamela is dead and Jeffrey has come back for some kind of revenge for, perhaps a miserable life that she ended up leading with him after, maybe Cece's divorce settlement wasn't all it was cracked up to be. Mason gives Victoria a cameo that he got from his mother, inscribed to Pamela from Cece. So she's getting a lot of family heirlooms out of this way.
She certainly is.
Brick returns to Johnny's with bruises on his face. He tells Julia he tripped over the curb on Anaconda Street? No, Anacapa Street. And get out because we're closed. Ted shows up looking for Haley, and Brick gives him the brush off as well, but not before telling Ted about the fact that Jake was hassling Haley earlier. Julia finds Haley lying battered on the beach. She tells Julia she was raped, but doesn't want Ted to know. So at the hospital, Julia calls Mason. When Mason and Julia bring her home to Ted, he realizes almost immediately what happened to her.
And I think, as we discussed in our last podcast, they're kind of setting up dueling narratives around this, because certainly we've seen Brick bruised and battered himself and without any really good explanation.
Mm-hmm.
But we also catch glimpses of Jake kind of trudging around too. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think those are going to be the two main suspects. Now, I don't know if I mentioned this last time or if this is something that came to me in between while I was just mulling it over. But what if Ted insists it was Jake and Haley takes Jake's side? That would drive a wedge between Haley and Ted as sort of like a secondary fallout from this.
Well, yes, and certainly if Brick comes under serious suspicion, this is going to have a fallout for the whole family, because, of course, he's Sophia's son. He's close to CC. We could also see this impact the Lockridges as well, because, of course, he's also Lionel's son.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I honestly, other than the fact that Haley was raped, I don't remember anything else about this storyline. So it'll be interesting to see that again, and how big does this thing become? Will this end with a big trial, maybe in the next sweeps in May, or, how this will affect all the various players and how many people will be brought into this storyline.
Well, if we recall a somewhat similar storyline near the beginning of the show's run, where we had Christy raped at the, whatever it was called, the beach bar. That brought in all the characters and sort of reverberated throughout the entire season. So.
Mm-hmm. And will this give Mason and Julia another opportunity to be at opposite sides of something?
Yes.
So, I assume this is going to be a major storyline for them. So, and of course, there's a rapist out there, maybe Haley wouldn't be the only target. So now we have that potential too.
That's right. Yeah.
I don't think we had any rapes in season 2 of Santa Barbara, but that made up for the 11 or so we had in season 1. So.
Well, and remember, we've also had a serial killer storyline as well from the beginning of the show. So, that could be something where we're kind of looking to see who's the next victim as well.
Mm-hmm. And, this can bring Cruz into it too, doing investigations into both Jake and Brick. So that's a story for him.
Yes, and I'm expecting, if it does kind of unfurl that way, that, we might have some cliffhangers where we see Eden walking alone, for example, and, worry about her welfare, or if Kelly gets out, something like that. Kelly's often sort of the target of all of these deranged people. So we could really see this play out for quite a while, I think. Yeah,
I don't know if the writers are going to want to put new, strong Kelly into something like that, but maybe she will have a different reaction than she would have before. So she kind of did say a couple days ago that she feels like a different person after her time in Switzerland.
Yeah.
So that is it for the Monday episode, but we've got a couple of things now that we're excited to see what the next steps are. Jeffrey seems to be okay, but no one has spotted his ring. And, of course, Kelly and Gina are in jail for the foreseeable future. And CC is trying to get hold of the Attorney General, at the very least, to try and get some bail for Kelly. So we'll see if any of that pans out when we see episode 660 of Santa Barbara. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Well, what do you know? The crown princess of Montecito descended from her throne to mix with the common folk.
My 8-year-old is smarter than you are, Keith. Any 8-year-old is a mental genius compared to you.
Welcome back.
Hello.
It's New Year's Eve, and we're just waiting for our party guests, and Diane thought she was safe from having to do a podcast tonight. Last podcast of 2025. We finished episode 660 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Tuesday, March 3rd, 1987. Oh, we're into March. The commissioner refuses to take Cruz's call. Eden was kind of hoping he'd be back on the force by now. Haley has a nightmare about the rape. Ted calls Cruz to try to talk Haley into going to the police, but she refuses. Eden talks with Haley, and Haley asks her not to leave. She says she doesn't want to be alone. Meanwhile, Cruz finds Ted on the beach, where he's decided that it's better for Haley not to go to the police, and he'll deal with the rapist himself. Cruz counsels him not to go looking for the rapist on his own. Haley decides that she will go to the police, but now Ted tries to talk her out of it, telling her that she'll be in every newspaper in the country as a Capwell. So even without our theorized Jake Brick controversy, Haley and Ted are already on opposite sides, even when they both switch sides in the same episodes.
Yeah, it's always interesting to me how soap operas will do a 180, in the course of a week, but here we're seeing it in the course of one episode.
Yeah, that's pretty fun. Jeffrey sends Kelly a letter in which he says they have a lot to talk about. Mason offers his services as an attorney to Jeffrey and gets the idea that Jeffrey has something against him. Jeffrey reluctantly accepts. Keith sends a subpoena to Cece. When Mason visits Keith comes up with a plan to blame everything on Jeffrey. Mason asks Kelly, "How much do you like this Jeffrey guy?" Cece likes the idea and sends Mason to approach Jeffrey with the plan. "You bloody traitor!" says Jeffrey, and he takes a swing at Mason. This is happening in Keith's office, I believe. Kelly calls Jeffrey to talk about the letter. Jeffrey says he can't talk right now and hangs up. So I feel like Jeffrey is contemplating taking the rap for Cece because he thinks it will help Kelly. What do you think?
I think when Kelly finds out about this, she's going to be pretty upset.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with Cece and Mason.
Yes.
Yeah. Cece says to Mason later, "You will be able to get him off, won't you?" So
Mason's like, "I'll try." And
yikes, poor Jeffrey. And if Jeffrey didn't have enough reason to hate Mason, whatever that may be, this will certainly cement things. Jeffrey does try to make a call to the UK earlier today, but the party he is trying to reach is not there. Mason visits the jail and tells Gina that Haley was raped. She doesn't believe him. Gina finds out that the matron gave the letter to Keith instead of Brandon. Kelly realizes that she wanted Brandon to bring her the tape. Keith shows up with a bunch of gifts for Brandon in exchange for telling him where the treasure is. Brandon says, "Mom said this would happen." There was a really hilarious scene with Keith and Brandon, and when the twist comes that Brandon has been expecting this and has been counseled on how to resist Keith's tempting gifts, it's really quite funny as Keith blows up while Brandon has a few funny lines about, "Oh yeah, Mom said you'd come to me and try to get me to tell you where the hiding place is." So Keith's other plan is to show up at the jail with a blank tape, or as Gina thinks, one of his porno tapes, pretending that Brandon did in fact give up the location of the tape. He says, "Oh, it was amazing, this hiding place you came up with. How did you think of that?" But Gina's not buying it for a minute and says,
no.
"Any 8-year-old is a mental genius compared to you." Then Gina steals a bottle of ammonia from the cleaning cart, and she tells Kelly that the secret of where the tape is will die with her, and she drinks the ammonia. So the episode ends with Kelly shouting for the guards. Now, I feel like this is either an escape plan for Gina or something. I don't know if she's actually drank ammonia or she's replaced it with water. But I assume the goal is to get to the infirmary and maybe escape from there?
Yeah, that's what I would think.
Yeah, I don't know if Gina will escape. If so, will she get the tape? And if so, how will that help her? Because, she's kind of in the same spot. And that is it for this Tuesday episode. We had a short credits, but Rick Crisis Consultant Joanna Gallers, PhD, is been added to the credits, and no mention of any pianos today. And that is it. You'll be happy to know you can go back to the couch and wait for our first guest to arrive. And we'll be back in 2026 after we watch episode 661 of Santa Barbara. We'll see you then. Happy New
Bye-bye.
Year. Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 661 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Wednesday, March 4th, 1987. This week I'm wearing one of the two shirts I bought at the Smallville wardrobe sale after Smallville went off the air. So this shirt may well have been worn by Michael Rosenbaum or Justin Hartley. I have to see if I can find an episode where this shirt matches. Back in 1987, Carolyn has a date at Johnny's. Her date recognizes Lionel from a talk he once gave and invites him over for a drink, even though Carolyn had told him not to let Lionel see that they were on a date. Well, the interaction does not go well.
No.
Lionel storms out and Carolyn follows him all the way home. And she does get him to admit that he cared for her in the past. So I think we kind of knew that. So I don't think that's going to inch things forward with them.
No. And I have to say, her date's pretty obnoxious. So, you really don't feel like she's trading up.
Yeah, it sounds like he's some guy she knew in Washington.
Yeah.
Didn't her interactions with Cece have something to do with Washington? I'm wondering if this guy knows Cece. I wonder if there's something to that that's unexplored. The commissioner offers Cruz his job back, which is kind of shocking since he didn't want to take Cruz's call earlier in the day. But after Cruz and Cece argue over whether or not Haley should go to the police, Eden soon realizes that Cece pulled some strings. And so she and Cruz discuss whether or not it's worth Cruz's pride to turn down this job offer. Mm-hmm. So that's what Cruz will be contemplating between episodes. Keith visits Gina in the hospital because, as you'll recall, she drank an entire bottle of ammonia. And in a scene similar to Gina talking to Cece's coffin, says she looks terrible. Wonders if maybe she would tell him where the tape is with her last breath. He says, I never said this to you, but I'm very, very sorry. You were meant to roam free like any other wild beast, to wreak havoc. Do it for yourself, damn it. Live. Well, when the tests reveal that Gina had switched the ammonia with water, Cece comes rushing in and tries to strangle her. Gina wants Cece arrested, but Keith refuses to do that. Keith hires a giant, who he nicknames Quasi, to guard Gina at all times. Gina steals another patient's sleeping pills and manages to knock Quasi out so that she can escape from the hospital to visit Haley, which is her stated reason for this whole thing. So Haley is very happy to see Gina, and they have a nice little time to talk before Keith shows up to arrest Gina. So another one of these little detours that Santa Barbara does. We're just in like one episode, maybe two in this case. A character goes from jail to doing something completely different to back in jail. That they quite often do, like with the Kelly and Jeffrey story. That kind of was a long ongoing thing, but there were all these little side trips.
This is one of those times when I wish soap opera writers would not assume that their audience has short memories, because this would have been actually a really nice opportunity for Gina to just drop a small mention of Summer.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when, it's in relation to Haley being raped, and we know that Summer was raped, and I think Gina said she was raped too when she was younger. So, well, everyone tries to talk Ted out of going to search for the rapist himself. There is some division between the family, between Cruz, Eden, Cece, and Sophia. Cece agrees with Ted that they shouldn't drag the Capwell name through the mud, but Sophia, agrees with Cruz that Haley should go to the police. So at Johnny's, that waitress, whose name I forgot to write down, we've heard her name a couple times, but I forgot to write it down. It's that one that was there that night that I mentioned. Oh, we've never seen her before. She tells Ted that Jake was hassling Haley that night and that Brick had to pull him off her. Ted tells Haley that Jake had scratch marks on his face earlier and had told the waitress that he was going to skip town. Haley says that's not enough evidence to blame the attack on Jake. Ted says he's going to pay. So I think this could go wrong in a number of ways for Ted. We've seen Jake beat up Ted before, for one thing.
Yeah, and I think the point was made at some point during this discussion with Cruz and Cece and Sophia that, you know, Ted is kind of walking a line here between, you know, is what he's doing really helping Haley? It doesn't seem to be helping her recover, and it's really becoming about him and his own sense of vengeance.
Yeah, I'm thinking this, you know, could mess up Haley's recovery too. All this stuff, you know. I feel like maybe if she realizes Ted's going after Jake, maybe she'll go to the police herself just to hope that they intervene and stop things from escalating between Ted and Jake. But that could result in Jake getting arrested, which, you know, without evidence is going to put a rift between the family, and also Jake will have another reason to hate the Capwells.
And of course it's going to come out, I feel, sooner rather than later, that Brick also kind of came staggering in that night covered in cuts and bruises. So this could really blow apart the Capwell family.
I would like to see that Johnny's bartender, just to see if he also has cuts and bruises as our only non-main cast member suspect so far that we've, you know, that was in that place that night. And that is it for the episode. We had a short credits, but the rape crisis consultant, Joanna Galler's PhD, and piano furnished by Schaefer and Sons were the only little extras in the credits in this episode. So Gina's back in jail. Maybe Kelly will have a trip out next time. Yeah, who knows how long that tape will be in play. I mean, Keith now knows Brandon knows where it is. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe with Haley's issues, Gina will decide to give up the tape just so she can get out to see Haley.
One thing we do know, perhaps accidentally, is that elements of this plot will continue to reverberate. Maybe even a year from now. We accidentally started watching the wrong episode, and it mentioned some things from this episode or from this storyline, and that was about a year from now. So
yeah, I think it was. I think I accidentally went into the 1988 folder, and I think we started playing the first few seconds of 1988. One sad thing is that I did see Scott Clark, who was one of the two characters I hated most on the show, Scott and Celeste. A lot of people loved them, separately and together, but I'm not looking forward to Scott Clark showing up on the show. So anyway, we'll see how this next year unfolds. And I've seen in my little notes that Minx will be showing up again soon. Hopefully we'll get a scene with the whole Lockridge family together, with Minx and the new Warren, and maybe the new Lakin will show up in time for a family photo. So that's something to look forward to the next 2 weeks, I think. And we'll see how the rest of these things progress after we watch 662. We'll see you then.
bye-bye.
If you go now, I'll be the only totally selfish person left on the face of the earth. But my God, you taught me the meaning of a four-letter word. More. If you go now, I won't have anything, you see. Leave me something to remember you by, something to symbolize what we had together. Like the tape. You gotta leave it to someone. Why not your partner in crime? I mean, you'll have eternal peace and I'll have a piece of the action.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 662 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Thursday, March 5th, 1987. Before we get into it, we did have a few sightings of Santa Barbara people on some of the shows we watch at night.
Old and new.
Yes, we watched, finally got Apple TV again and watched Palm Royale, and who should show up as a judge but Nicholas Coster, our Lionel Lockridge. And I kind of vaguely remember hearing at the time, it first came out, this might have been his last role. So it was nice to see him in at least one episode. So, and then last night, during our Falcon Crest weekly Friday night watchings, we've started season 8, and Hope from Days of Our Lives has joined the cast. And now in episode 2, Brick shows up to sleep with Melissa. So that is nice to see that he had some other roles. Mm-hmm. All right, back in 1987, Keith tries to get Jeffrey to admit that Kelly paid him to help her. So even though he's willing to make a deal with the Capwells to blame it all on Jeffrey, he's still, since they haven't agreed to all that, he's still hedging his bets on whether he can get more evidence on Kelly. Jeffrey tells Cece and Sophia to get lost. Jeffrey fires Mason, and when Mason mentions it to Julia, she visits Jeffrey to try and get him to take her on as the lawyer, but he also refuses. Although it's interesting because later in the episode, when they talk about Jeffrey's hearing, they say Julia is going to be his lawyer. So I don't know if that means, is she still a public defender? Like, maybe because he hasn't chosen a lawyer, they're assigning him a public defender, and it ends up being Julia anyway. I guess that's what's going on.
Yeah, I was a little confused, but I don't think we saw him outright reject Julia. I think he just wasn't really cooperating with her, so maybe he didn't absolutely refuse. I don't know.
Kelly sees Jeffrey when they both are being processed through the DA's office there, but he ignores her. She, of course, doesn't know all this stuff about, that they're trying to get him to take the rap. And then she sends him a love letter, which he crumples up. So I feel like, I don't know, maybe Jeffrey will take the fall for Kelly, and it'll hopefully Mason will be able to get him off of this.
Yeah, and I also wondered if perhaps Jeffrey almost has some doubts about whether Kelly kind of sent Mason to him knowing that he might do this. Of course, we know Kelly didn't, but, Jeffrey's in a kind of fragile place right now, so he might be wondering who he can actually trust.
Mm-hmm. And as we saw an episode or two ago, he tried to call presumably that mystery woman in the UK and wasn't able to get through. So he's basically got no one here, so he can't trust anyone. Mm-hmm. Victoria redecorates Mason's place, but he doesn't like it. This is kind of their little story for the episode, and in the end they get over it and things get put back where they were, I guess. Lionel apologizes to Julia for having left by the time she showed up at Johnny's last night for their dinner. He had completely forgotten it, I guess, until Julia showed up in the morning to figure out where he'd gone.
Yeah, poor Julia's not getting a lot of love lately between Mason marrying someone else and Lionel forgetting about her.
Mm-hmm. It's too bad we haven't seen any more scenes with Julia and Morn hanging out, because that's a nice relationship there, and then Julia could end up hanging out more with Jane too, so she might have a new friend to interact with on the show if that happened.
It would also be nice to see occasionally Julia having a couple of sisterly phone calls with Augusta.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Warren tells Lionel that he heard him arguing with Carolyn last night and that they're both acting like children. Jane tells Lionel to forgive Carolyn, and then Lionel phones Augusta. So I think a few episodes ago, Warren had said he had talked to Augusta over Christmas or whatever, and now we see Lionel just calling up Augusta. So, our thought that, was she kidnapped or something, or why did she leave? There doesn't seem to be any evidence as to why she's gone, especially if she's just readily available for visits and calls. So it's, there's really no explanation as to why she left Lionel.
No, it seems like they've maybe changed gears a few times with this because, of course, when she did leave the show, it seemed like she was under some pressure to do so by an outside force.
Mm-hmm.
But since then, we've heard of her, living somewhere else, and I think she was hosting a Thanksgiving or something off screen and was off kind of living her own life. So we really don't know what has happened with that situation.
Yeah, we might have to wait for Louise Sorel to return someday down the line, just to figure out what happened. I certainly don't remember from my original viewing of this. Carolyn and Gus have breakfast and, of course, discuss Lionel. Gus is such an easygoing guy now. It's pretty great. Jane tells Carolyn that Lionel will forgive her someday and Alice will come around too. Carolyn comes to the Lockridge house to pay for the window she smashed when she forced her way in last night. And Jane tells Lionel she's moving out of the Lockridge mansion. So I don't know if we're going to get an apartment for Jane or if we'll see her back in that apartment she was sharing with Haley, because Haley's living in the Capwell mansion now. Presumably they weren't continuing to pay rent on that place because neither of them are rich. So not like Ted keeping Kelly's apartment all these years. So yeah, we'll see where Jane ends up moving into. Alice is living with Gus, so it would have been fun to have Alice and Jane as roommates. I don't know, maybe that will somehow come about. Yeah, I like I'd like to see Jane interacting with more people, really. And Kelly tells Gina that she thought she had killed herself. They spend basically the whole episode chatting. Kelly, telling Gina, you're a lot like Cece, because Gina's complaining out of Capwell's, just, fend for them, or watch out for themselves, and other people be damned. She said, well, you're like that with Haley and Brandon. I mean, you broke out of here to see Haley, and Kelly spends the whole episode trying to find some common ground with Gina, but Gina says, I grew up poor. I was the kind of people you ignored when you were growing up because you and Eden were little princesses. But she tells Kelly she's got the same dreams as everyone else to, get married and to have a nice life. And Kelly says, well, you're not going to realize your dreams in prison. I think that's a bit of the turning point for Gina in this episode. Gina tells Keith to arrange a meeting with the Capwells. And, of course, Keith fears the worst. Gina calls Brandon and tells him to bring the tape. And we find out where the tape has been hidden all this time. It's at the bottom of Brandon's fish tank under the gravel. It looked like it was just kind of wrapped in saran wrap by the prop department. And when Brandon pulled it out, the saran wrap was kind of loose. I would think in reality Ziploc bags would have been better because I don't know if the tape would have survived that many months underwater otherwise. So, but for the purposes of the story, I think the implication was it was well sealed because when we see it later, it is wrapped properly again. Brandon hides it in his bear and shows up at the meeting. Keith correctly guesses the tape is in the bear, tries to bribe Brandon with $100, then tries to snatch it from him. But, the people are already arriving for the meeting. You can't really do too much to Brandon. I think even Cruz and Eden have shown up by this point. And in Keith's office, Gina hands over the tape to the shock of the Capwell family. And in exchange, of course, she wants to be let off on all the charges. The divorce, of course, will happen. But she wants half of everything Cece earned while they were married. And Cece says, I will give you the divorce, I will drop the charges, but you get no money, and I want the stock that you bought with my money to be handed back to me. So Gina signs the agreement. And thus ends the long odyssey of the tape.
Now, I'm assuming that once they view the tape, this will start to facilitate Kelly getting released from prison. That's my assumption.
Yeah, I suspect this will be, an overnight thing. Like, I don't know if we'll even see all these things played out. I think it'll just be tomorrow she'll be home or something.
But it'll be interesting to see the ramifications with Jeffrey.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Does he get let out too?
Does Kelly have his charges for evading justice too?
Yeah, and also, is perhaps the real long-term effect of this storyline the rupturing of his relations with the Capwells even more, and how that affects his relation with Kelly and her relationship with her family.
We still have one more episode this week, so we'll see how this wraps up. We'll see where Gina ends up. She'll be having to move somewhere. Maybe Haley's old apartment will change. Her old, motel she used to live in, potentially. Maybe Kelly's old place down by the beach. It's Sally's old place. And we'll see if Kelly gets out and if Jeffrey refuses to see her when she tries to visit him. And we'll see if Lionel and Carolyn manage to get back together.
And we'll see, perhaps, if Pearl still has a role to play in these.
That's right. He'll be racing over to the Capwell house when he hears that Kelly's out. And they can finally get back together, like they have been in his mind all these months.
Mm-hmm.
We had the cast credits today, and then normal credits were normal, same as last time. And then in the additional credits, we have Brandon, played by Brandon Call, and I think we're going to have a temporary one-day recast Brandon for an episode when Brandon Call wasn't available, coming up in the next week or two. I think I underestimated how much our wait for Mix is. I think she'll be on in 3 weeks. Matron, whom we've seen a few times, played by Sharon Madron. And then we had the crew credits too, and then the piano furnished by Schaefer and Sons. So that is it for this Thursday episode. And we'll be back after we watch episode 663 of Santa Barbara. We will see you then.
Bye-bye.
It's Friday. Welcome to episode 663 of Misha Dianne Watch Santa Barbara.
Hello.
We finished episode 663, which first aired March 6th, 1987. Wrapping up our week, Cruz gets his gun and badge back, which he's decided that just because Cece wanted to do something nice for him, he shouldn't just reject it offhand.
Which actually shows a little bit of personal growth on Cruz's part.
Mm-hmm. Haley visits to tell him that Ted is going after Jake, who he suspects because he had injuries on his face. Cruz says, "Oh, good that you came here, because I'm just got my badge back." Cruz gets Haley to retell her story of what happened that night, and she mentions that she thinks she scratched her attacker. When he goes to Keith to get a warrant to search Jake's place, Keith tells him, without a written statement, "I can't do anything. Just your hearsay on what Haley told you is not how we do things around here. Don't you know procedure?" Cruz goes to the Abernathy stables to look for Jake and runs into Ted there, who is there for much the same reason, looking for Jake. Except, of course, he plans to confront Jake. Cruz strongly cautions him not to go after Jake.
Yeah, it's kind of, I feel like Ted has made this all about him, and he's kind of forgotten to actually care for Haley in this. Plus, it does seem to me that if he goes on a rampage against Jake, and especially if Jake is the perpetrator, he's basically ruining the police case against Jake. So.
I hadn't even thought about that. I thought the opposite. If Jake is innocent, he's going to ruin it between himself and Haley, quite frankly.
Well, I think that too.
Ted hangs around at the stables, and guess what? Eventually Jake does show up to get some stuff, and they end up in a fight. Jake kind of just defends himself at first without really punching back too much, but eventually Ted gets too annoying. He does punch Ted a few times. But Ted gets Jake on the ground and then picks up this big metal item that he looks like he's about to hit Jake with. Cruz walks in and tells him to stop. So I feel like Ted's going to be the Capwell that ends up in jail at the end of this episode.
Yeah.
We will see now that Cruz is on the force. I think he'll have no choice but to take Ted in. I think Jake will probably press charges. Kelly finds out that Jeffrey has returned her letter. She does not know why Jeffrey is upset with her. She is surprised to see Gina being released, and Gina reveals to Kelly, I gave up the tape. You'll be out of here by the end of the day, I imagine. Kelly is released and is really excited for Jeffrey's release as well, but Cece and Mason resist telling her exactly what they've done to Jeffrey. So she asks to see Jeffrey herself, and Keith has him brought up, and he tells her that Cece has pinned everything on him. It's only then that Kelly gets the full story from Mason and Cece when she confronts them. But they say Jeffrey has misunderstood. It's clear that if the charges are dropped against Cece, that is better for everyone because nothing can really be pinned on Jeffrey, but Kelly is not 100% sure Mason can clear Jeffrey of all these charges that they've now kind of railroaded him with.
Yes, and as she points out repeatedly, he was the one who actually helped her. So, there's sort of the moral argument as well.
I feel like there will be a bit of a surprise to Mason and Cece when Kelly reveals she's in love with Jeffrey. Kelly posts Jeffrey's bail, but he doesn't know who posted his bail. I mean, who else could it be, right? And he gets into a limo for some reason, thinking, everyone gets a limo in Montecito when they get out of jail. But guess what? The limo driver is Kelly, and she kidnaps Jeffrey.
And I actually loved this moment. It actually came at the end of the episode, and she kind of flings off her chauffeur's hat. And it was very much the kind of image that would have appeared in an 80s rock video, probably in slow motion. So I really liked that. I also thought Kelly raised a good point when she was arguing with Cece and Mason, in which she said, you're railroading him and you're not actually doing anything for him. You haven't even posted his bail. And I hadn't even thought of that, but it is a really good point.
Yeah, I don't know how much they'll be talking about the case during this kidnapping, but it'll be interesting to see what Kelly has planned for him. And as long as she doesn't take him out of town, I don't think that'll violate his bail. Keith holds a press conference to make himself look like the hero for exonerating the innocent Kelly Capwell. He always knew that at some point he'd have to twist it, so I don't know, maybe he had that planned. The press seem to buy it? I don't know. I guess we'll see if the newspapers make Keith look like the hero or not, or if they just gloss over it. Mason plays Gina's tape to confirm that it is real. Cece toys with the idea of not signing the form to free Gina, since they do have the tape after all, which Gina freaks out about. But eventually Cece signs it because he says, I want it in writing that our association is over. Gina returns to the mansion to pick up her clothes, but following a shouting match with Cece, she storms out. He's worried that this is just an excuse she'll have to return, so he throws all of her clothes out the window, and they land basically on the path in front of her. And the last thing that gets thrown out the window is that painting of Cece and Gina that she had made up all those months ago. I don't remember if that ever really came into play the way we thought it would. Gina tells Keith she's got nowhere to go. So Keith says, maybe Lily can give you a loan. Nice to see Lily mentioned. And I wonder, will they say she's still in town? And Gina says she is out on her own trying to make a life for herself. So still not necessarily clear that Lily has left town. So maybe the writers are still hedging their bets on that. Keith then offers to pay for a hotel for a couple of nights, but of course, Gina was angling the whole time for Keith to offer Gina to move in with him, and he eventually caves and does just that. So that's good. They don't have to build a new set for Gina's place. Have we seen Keith's place? Can't remember.
Well, not for quite a long time. I mean, we had the whole thing way back when something got hidden in his cat food mix or something.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I guess we will see that.
Earring, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, so they do have some stuff in storage for Keith's place. that was probably the kitchen we saw. They may have to flesh out his living room area a bit more if Gina's going to be hanging around there. Rape crisis consultant Joanna Galler's PhD. So that is it for this week. Got some forward motion on several stories. The saga of the tape, I think, is finally over, and it's now the saga of Jeffrey. And we'll see A, if Jeffrey gets through to England, B, where Kelly takes him, C, if he gets off on these charges, D, if he forgives Kelly for anything, E, if he goes after Mason now for whatever the reason is that he came to town in the first place.
One thing we do know, as we mentioned a few episodes ago, we accidentally put on the wrong episode, and it was from, I think, a year from now, and this story is still going to be reverberating at least a year from now.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
we're in for the long haul now.
Yeah, and will he be able to just walk into his... Did he get the job as the piano player at Johnny's? I think so.
I think he also managed to get into a university music course as well. So,
yeah, so now that he's out on bail, will he be showing up to either of those things? And how is Brick's face right now? And does anyone else have injuries from that night?
And just a quick side note, they keep referring to Jeffrey as a Brit. The actor is actually South African, so his accent is not actually quite British. But close enough, I guess, in terms of the story.
And I believe the mystery woman was British when we heard her. But as far as I can tell, it's going to be end of the year before we see her again. So it'll just be all Jeffrey. Although I think some other family members of his might be showing up in the near future.
And maybe Pearl will show up again, too. You never know.
Yeah, I guess maybe with Kelly kidnapping Jeffrey, Pearl might be wandering around town wondering what's going on. He does have his business back of ferrying people. I don't know where he's ferrying them to. Certainly not the casino, but maybe he's ferrying them from Montecito to inner Santa Barbara. And that's it for week 136. We'll be back with a new shirt when we watch week 137 of Santa Barbara. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
We wanted to make the supreme sacrifice, willing for a little dishonor before death.
No, I will never let you touch me again.
Oh, don't make it into a melodrama. I wish I had a mustache to twirl. I don't want your butt, I want your tape.